Why? Women and children first. Children are the most vulnerable, and historically it's been women who nursed and raised them. Traditionally, women and children went first, because they continued on culture and survival of the future generation. Women were likely to take care of children, nurse them, be needed to take care of them, or maybe even be pregnant often. Through the mothering role, women also were carriers of culture and passed on knowledge and tradition. However, since women were physically limited when pregnant and nursing, and little children needed intense care for survival, it gave their culture, their traditions, and their future generations a better chance at survival when women and children were evacuated out of harm's way. Also, in the past, women were seen as loot too, raped, enslaved, and often taken back into the victor's country as forced labor, wives, or sex slaves. So, as backwards as that may seem, losing their women meant not only using people, but using future mothers, future for their culture, and future of their society, as well as losing the person responsible to nurture children. Now, if of 100 men, only one came back, this one could still father several children and make up the loss in future generations. But to lose 99 women out of a 100 could potentially destroy an entire culture, since her number of pregnancies was limited and how many children she could nurture too. In addition to that, historically, men were the ones trained with weaponry from a young age. Hell, there's skeletal evidence that the actual bone structure of many men was entirely different from women. Wear muscle attached to the bones in shoulders and arms, because they trained with bow and arrow from an early age on. Their daily work and weapons training actually changed their bodies. Women didn't have that. Historically, it would have been useless to put a bow or sword in the hands of women who didn't have the training or physical strength to wield them. Now, of course, nowadays women aren't property anymore. And they aren't the only ones educating and nursing children. And we aren't going at it with bows and arrows anymore. But in essence the issue is the same. Young children need care, as well as the elderly. And that role is traditionally still female even today. Keeping a culture alive is still tied to hearth and home, and still fundamentally female in many European countries. 2. They still tell the stories to the children, pass on traditions, and spend a whole lot more time with raising their kids than most men do. So it's also the fact that for most children the mother is the main emotional caretaker, and not so much the men, that still feeds into the women and children first mentality. Also, it still is common that men are going for jobs that require physical power more than women do. And in areas such as Ukraine, they also still have more experience with weapons and physical work. Of course, that has also changed with time. And many men never had a weapon in their hands. And many women are unmarried or have no children and family in need of care. But culturally, you also don't have as many women who are physically fit enough or used to that kind of training. That would make you good in a battlefield. And let's be honest, even if they are willing, there is no time to give them training lessons when the bullets are already flying. That aside, it's not as if women don't do anything. Traditionally, these areas have never been as bad with excluding women from the military in times of war as other countries. And these women are strong-willed and fearless. You can see that in the numbers of women staying behind and helping with defense and building weaponry. But these women are not part of the real military. These women defend their homes, families, and children, alongside their men, either unable to leave, or unwilling. And this brings us to another reason why women are not, and will most likely not for a long time, included in drafts and forced military service. It's still an inherently male-dominated area of society. Women are present in the medical fields, as caretakers and nurses. Some are in there among the supply chains, cooking and so on. But in most countries, women are excluded from service in Army, Navy, and Marine forces. Why? Simple. Because all of these combat troops are often set out for male only in equipment, buildings, structure and supplies. Take the U.S. for example. Here it took decades for women to be halfway accepted within the general forces. And they still are often limited where they can go and what they can do. And they are still less likely to be deployed as full male troops are because society is still of the opinion that women need extra accommodations and cannot share the same basic commodities as men. Logistics in wartime are hard enough without needing to separate by gender and basically doubling everything to accommodate for this separation. In addition, depending on the opposing cutlore, women often are still seen as inferior, and may be especially targeted due to religious or cultural reasons, and their rape and torture used as means of warfare as it has been in the past, and that's not counting cultures and countries that don't even look at women on the same level as men and don't put them on equal grounds in their society, let alone in their military forces. You can't expect change when there's already war, when there was none in times of peace. So lastly, in summary, back in the day it was a matter of cultural and societal survival to rescue women and children. Men did simply have the better chances for survival in war. Nowadays, however, while many historical things have changed, we are still stuck in a society where there is no equality between man and women when it comes down to the military. Women can volunteer, but when it comes down to it, most cultural and religious communities still hold on to the rules of the past. And what hasn't changed in literally hundreds of years will not change in times of war when there's literally no time to do it. Not my comment. Copied from another from a previous post like this. Historically, men are expendable, and as someone said previously, 1 man and 20 women have a better chance at sustaining a population than 20 men and 1 woman. Women, historically, proved to be extremely valuable during wars and tough times, whether fighting alongside soldiers or saving lives. However, women biologically and physically cannot compete in the stamina and strength department compared to men. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Therefore, women can have the choice to either stick around and fight, or to be sheltered to bear and/or raise children. Both options are equally beneficial for humans. Since repopulating isn't settling well with you, why do you think it should be otherwise? What is your counter-argument? If you're talking about war, it's sad, but the enemy usually does fucked up things to captured women. In the army there were stories of female soldiers that got captured in Iraq. I think having men for the battle is a safer bet. One of the reasons is because traditionally men were the only ones allowed to fight in wars and be part of the army, since in general it is considered a war crime to kill civilians. And since women and children are not part of the army and therefore civilians, they protect them first. To this day it's mostly men in the army, so the generalization of women and children first is still used. Good question. I really hope gay parents or single fathers are being allowed to stay with their kids. Save all the reproductive chat, folks. This is not the case here. The case here is literally just down to good old gender roles. But with good reason. We're sexually dimorphic. Doesn't matter how you want to frame it, the fact is that generally men are physically stronger, tougher and faster than women. Things that are imperative to being an apt soldier. Men are physically more suitable for conditions of war and are more necessary than women for a competent and strong military. Because it's the album with "Everybody Wants Some." on it, which might actually be the very best rock song in existence. Because Van Halen said so? I'll explain, as I'm from Ukraine. Here the situation is that we are only in the process of equality. Like you can go to army, etc. And just for you to know, there are many female soldiers in our army, but it's not obligated and popular. While men in our country mostly have physical trainings in general for such occasions, women don't. No one expected the real war coming, so men typically viewed here as more prepared to that. Plus equipment is mostly for men, like clothes, shoes, etc. You cannot create an equal army in one day. You need finance. Because if we promoted men first, then none of those kids or ladies are getting a lifeboat. Literally zero chance. Every time. In my country we are told that women are more important than men, and kids are future of nation. Women have the capability of becoming pregnant and take each 9 months or more to be able to get pregnant again. Men can make a woman pregnant every day or several times a day. One man is enough to repopulate if there's enough women. Kids are part of the repopulation process. It's kind of cold, but I think it's a reproductive strat. So yes, women are considered baby machine and guys semen guns. I once heard that the saying came about because in emergencies men used to rush to save themselves, first forgetting their wives, mothers, sisters, and children. Because they were faster and stronger, they would escape emergency situations and the women and children would be lost. Save the women and children first was propaganda used to remind men that they should assist women and children in the case of emergencies. All that talk about equality is out the window real quick when one's life is doubt. OFC people want to save their own ass. Men should be treated equally as to who gets to save their ass. I was wondering, what would be your rule then? What's your solution for current war? Leave everyone to fight? Kids? Teens? Only save babies because they can't hold a gun? Leave everyone childless to fight? A lot of men who don't want to participate in war are fleeing. A lot of women who are able and want to fight are staying. It's so men can at least die in peace and quiet. Source: have wife and kids. Because men are expendable. I studied this a long time ago in a gender studies high school class. Women and children were never first. In fact, they were last. Men would fight for things like lifeboats and bunkers and not allow women or children in. It became a rule after lightning struck a ship in the 1840s, I believe. It didn't become popularized until it was published in a book a few decades later. Anyone saying it's for repopulation is wrong, lol. It's because women weren't treated like humans.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.